ranking every single Clash Royale evolution from worst to first. Coming in at the worst evolution, it is Firecracker, with arrows being so prevalent, with bait being prevalent. Everyone has arrows, and if you don't have a response to some type of bait card like Firecracker, that's just on you. Coming in at number 18 is the Mortar evolution. Ever since they nerfed it, it just hasn't been the same. Mortar has always been kind of like this one tricky kind of deck. It's really hard to get mortar connections, and when you do, they're very valuable. Usually people would win with the Evo and not just the regular mortar, but now they can't do that, and so it's just a regular mortar, and if you let it connect, that's kind of your fault. At number 17, we have bats. Zap is still one of the most used evolutions, and even if you do zap them afterwards, they're super easy to take out. They're not really that much of a problem. People usually have arrows, people have zap, people zap them right away. So, they're pretty weak. They're not that good. Coming in at number 16 is the Ice Spirit evolution. I've actually used this recently, and my opinion has changed a little bit about it, but it's honestly still pretty bad. I think that it needs to have a change for the frequency of the ice stun. I think it needs to be faster and maybe do a little bit more damage. But yeah, this has always been one of the weakest. I would love to see it as one of the strongest. At 15, we have Barbarians. It honestly pains me that Barbarians are this low because I used to rely on them a lot with my Golem decks, especially with Giant being prevalent. Now the Goblin Giant being even more prevalent, and RG. It's really hard to use them because most of the time they're just using Fireball. They're using Sparky along with these decks. They're using Demolisher. Bowler also just destroys them. So it's really hard to get that much value from them. And I don't know what they need to do to buff these, but they're just not strong anymore. At number 14, we have Archers. They are really good in very specific situations, but majority of the time, people are just going to arrow them right away. They're going to get rid of them, and if they don't have arrows or something to get rid of them, they can get lots of value. But if you're playing Ultimate Champion, chances are someone's going to have a counter to them. So they're just not that good. At number 13, we have the Evo Skellies. I still think these are pretty good. I am ranking them a little bit lower this time around, just because people are running zap, people are running arrows. I think you can counter them pretty easily with troops now, and yeah, I honestly, they're just not as strong as what they were before in the previous metas. You'll still see them a lot, and they still can win you games, but it's really rare that they are just dominating the entire game. At number 12, we have Knight. Now, ever since they nerfed him, people have been using him, but he just hasn't been as consistent because he doesn't have that HP multiplier anymore. So yeah, it's just not that good anymore. At number 11, we have the Tesla. The Tesla used to be almost number 1, but ever since they nerfed it, people just stopped using it, and honestly, it just hasn't been as good, which I'm really thankful for because this thing was plaguing Clash Royale, the meta. It was so strong. The Evo is still really strong, but the base card just isn't anymore. So that's why it's this low. It could be a little bit higher, but from playing against it with Golem, it's honestly been pretty weak. At number 10, we have the Battle Ram evolution. This has kind of made a comeback recently with all of the bait decks going around, and I've honestly lost a couple of games because of the Battle Ram. I might want to check it out again. I know they nerfed it so it doesn't knock back like Mega Knight or some other big troops, but it still knocks back a decent amount of troops, and the evolved barbarians that come out of them are still really good. So honestly, kind of an underrated Evo. At number 9, we have the Goblin Barrel. With Dagger Duchess getting nerfed, these have made a tremendous comeback, and were one of the worst Evos. Now it's one of the best, and it's a little bit of a surprise. I'm not a huge fan of bait, but I'm sure those who are pretty happy right now because now they can use the barrel evolution. So I've lost a couple games because of this, not having too many bait responses, but yeah, if you don't you're screwed. At number 8, we have the newest evolution, the Goblin Giant. Honestly, I thought this thing was pretty weak, but if you don't have a response to it, it can be very, very deadly and easily 3-crown you. People have been pairing this with Sparky, and it has just been very menacing. It's only one cycle, so I might try out some decks. But yeah, it's honestly very strong still. At number 7, we have the Wall Breakers. Because bait has been making a comeback, people have started using Wall Breakers again. They did nerf them, but honestly, the value that they get is still really, really good. With Dagger Duchess being nerfed, it's just a lot harder to take these out. People are using them a lot more, especially with Goblin Barrel. These are very menacing. At number 6, we have the Valkyrie, one of the underrated Evos in the game. Used a lot with Lava Loon, but can be used in majority of decks, and honestly isn't that bad of an Evo. I thought it would be a lot worse, but a lot of people are using it. I've lost a lot of games because of the Valk. It's honestly pretty strong. The tornado damage, it kills bats like instantly, so it makes the Night Witch useless, like a Golem Night Witch push shredded, and there's not much you can do about it. You can get a Phoenix in there too, but most likely they're going to support that, and it's just going to ruin your push. So, pretty good Evo, not going to lie. It pains me that these are number 5 on the list, but they did buff them last update, or, you know, a couple updates ago. People didn't really use them that much, but because Dagger Duchess got nerfed, these have made a tremendous comeback in the meta, and it's honestly the worst. I hate when recruits are meta because it's just a bunch of spam. They'll put like Goblin Giant and recruits in the same deck, and it's the worst, but I guess we're just gonna have to find new counters for him. But right now, one of the best Evos. At number 4, we have RG. I really wish this wasn't meta again. RG has been in the meta for like the past 2 years. No matter what meta there is, whether it was the previous one, 6 months ago, a year ago, 2 years ago, Royal Giant has always been in the meta. And with the evolution, like, I don't think it's ever not going to be meta. They buffed the the original Royal Giant, and then they nerfed the Evo, but it doesn't really matter because they buffed the regular one, and the regular one was always still very strong and always needed nerf because people just fast cycle it, and it's really hard to deal with. You can't even use Barbarians, especially against the Evo. They're just going to have Fireball. They're just going to have Fisherman. They're just going to count. There's like no way to counter this except for air troops. That is like the only way that you can counter it. But if you have any ground troops, you're just absolutely screwed. And even if you do have air troops, they're going to have Fireball and arrows, and they can just take out whatever you're using super easily. Same with, like, they also have Phoenix. I don't understand why this card is always in the meta. I don't get it. I wish it was one of the worst Evos again. Coming in at number 3 is the Wizard. The Wizard is by far still one of the best evolutions. Didn't really receive much of a nerf. Although Arrows does take out the shield, I've always believed that Arrows should have done that. So really glad to see that they did do that. And with Dagger Duchess being nerfed, you know, it's definitely a good move for the game. But yeah, it's still really strong, still very prevalent in the meta, and definitely top 3. Coming in at number 2 is the Bomber evolution. Honestly, a surprise to still see it doing really well in the meta, but I've been using it. It's honestly still strong, even though it has 2 cycles now. They didn't change any of the stats for it, so it's still the same old broken Bomber. You just have to be a little bit more smart with the placements, but it's come absolutely clutch on defense and offense. Still one of the best, cheapest Evos in the game. Now, the number 1 evolution is Zap. Now, I know that Zap did get a damage reduction, and I think that's a good thing. But it's still one of the best Evos. You still see it in Lava Hound. You still see it in a lot of decks because it can deal with Swarm. It can deal with Bait. Bait's a lot more prevalent. People are using Inferno Towers, Inferno Dragons, and I've always wanted Zap to be used in the meta, especially with Golem, and it's still everywhere. It's still one over the past like 14 days. It's still like the best, most used like consistent Evo, and I don't really see it changing at all. I really don't. I think people are still going to be using it, and I'm still going to be using it because I love this card. What do you guys think about my ranking for the evolutions? I feel like I based it off of Royal API and just, you know, my experiences in Ultimate Champion as a Golem player. Now, other people might have other opinions, like Mortar should probably be higher. Um, I don't agree with it. I really don't. I don't think Mortar is that good. And I know a lot of people are going to be upset about it. A lot of mid ladder players are going to complain that Firecracker should be higher, Skelly should be higher, all of this and that. All of these can be good in their own respects in their own certain situations, but I'm doing this based off of like top ladder. The most dominant Evos are at the top, and the weakest ones, the ones that are easily countered, are at the bottom. So that's how I rank these. Mortar can be good, but Void and Lightning are everywhere in this meta. So it's just really tough. And yeah, I just think if you disagree, let me know in the comments. And yeah.